Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, are you tired of all the bullshit out there? There's a lot of BS out there. There's a lot of fake people. We're going to be talking about today with my brother David how to live authentically, how to live as your authentic self. And if you stay to the end, we're going to give you three things that you can do today to actually start becoming more authentic in your life and in your business. Now, my brother is an amazing man, family man, author, speaker, coach, Swiss Army knife of positivity. Welcome to the show, my brother. How are you?
Thanks, Richard. Great to be here. I appreciate it. Like the introduction.
Thank you so much for coming on. So, right out of the gate, what is your definition of resiliency?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I used to think of things like tenacity and never giving up, and just I used to think that my greatest gift was perseverance. I was just going to keep going until the end, and that's still absolutely part of it. But I think for me, so much of it is where am I coming from? What is my mindset? Like, how much am I really finding my own authenticity, my own alignment, and bringing that to the world? Because I think we need that resilience when we're struggling and fighting through all the things that we're not. And the moment we get in touch with who we are and operate in the world from that authentic place, the resiliency is just a different experience because we're just operating as us. And granted, life throws all kinds of shit on top of us, and we got to unbury ourselves. But I would say that combination of that old tenacity and that old perseverance, but really the perseverance, the feeling of it tends to go away when we get in touch with that authenticity of ourselves and we just show up. And when we're operating from that place, things tend to unfold in synchronistic and kind of miraculous ways.
All right, so give us a quick down and dirty about where you come from. Of course, you're an East Coast guy like I am. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about you, where you come from, where'd you grow up, and how did you become such a force like you are today?
Yeah, well, thanks. It's funny. I grew up on like a dead end dirt road outside of Syracuse, New York, which it's not the New York people often think of. It's rural farmland. There was nobody anywhere near there, and I was just a really weird little kid that teachers didn't quite know what to do with and didn't quite know how I fit into the world. And that was a lot of my story when I was younger. Until when I was 18, I got diagnosed with ADHD, and they said, that kind of makes sense now why you had this high IQ, but you couldn't seem to do anything we asked of you. You could never comply, you could never play along, you could never sit still, you could never follow directions. I always joked that it was like I had the answers, but I had no idea what the questions were. And so, they medicated me for a while, and all of a sudden, like I understood how to operate in this world that everybody else seemed to be operating in, and went on, became a teacher. I got my master's degree and became an entrepreneur and did a bunch of stuff. And then on my 30th birthday, I got invited to a psychic fair, and I'd never been into anything like that before, but I just thought it'd be really interesting to go check it out. And I sat down with this lady that was like, I walked around the whole room and it was just obvious. This woman, Sandy, was like, this is who I'm supposed to work with. I don't know why. But she started shuffling her tarot cards and laid them out. And she started telling me the story about my life, that it all just made sense. And she said, I know you're moving across the country and people aren't happy about it, but you got to do what's right for you. And it just blew my mind that somebody could, know nothing about me and know everything about me. And she told me the job was going to come through. And then she started to say, this stuff that's happening for me, like it's going to open up for you too. And it literally did the next day. And, from that point forward, I just became very intuitively guided. And it became really this quest for authenticity that we're talking about today. And, there's a whole long story I could go into about that. But, I went through all these I almost feel like my life was divided into different segments. And, this last segment has been about being an intuitive coach and leading my life through my own intuition and authenticity and creating the life I want to live and teaching other people how to do the same.
Now, growing up in Syracuse,
Mhm.
Syracuse Orangemen go.
There you go. Yeah.
Great college,
Go to
had
the
some great
dome and the hill. Yeah.
some great athletes have come out of Syracuse.
Yeah. I got to see
But
Donovan
also,
McNabb playing there too. That was awesome. Yeah.
yep. But now, it's also a place where if you weren't authentic, if you got found out for being a liar, or in New Jersey or New York, we called it being fugazi, which, being false or being fake,
Yeah. Yeah.
you probably get your ass beat. And for me,
Exactly.
I grew up in an Italian family. And if you found out to be fake, might get a lot more than just get your ass beat. So
Yeah.
did that force you to learn how to figure out who you are
Yeah.
when you're with other people?
Absolutely. It's interesting. 'Cause like 3rd through 8th grade, I went to this school in Westmoreland, New York, which was rural, tough, like badass, and there was just direct consequences. If you were a jerk, like you got beat down, like you weren't gonna get away with thinking you were better than anybody else. Nobody did. And then in 9th grade, I changed to another school, which was, a little bit wealthier community, a little bit nicer area. And there was so much fakeness, and people were getting away with it. People were being celebrated for who they were pretending to be. And like, I just didn't know how to deal with that. Like I ended up finding my small group of people that I hung out with, but it was kind of the first moment I realized, well, I don't quite understand how this world works when people aren't authentic, and for other people to want to emulate it, or for like the cool kids, it didn't make sense to me at all. And so having those two contrasts, from a place where there were direct consequences for not being authentic to there were actually direct rewards for being inauthentic, it really made me double down on the authenticity. And I think there's a lot of anger for me. I know there's a lot of anger for me through those high school years of just being in a situation where I just like, what are people doing? I don't understand why anybody would want to be something different from themselves, or play these games, or pretend. It made no sense to me, and filled me with anger, maybe rage.
But now, after you got diagnosed,
Mm-hmm.
and like I got diagnosed later in life,
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of embraced it
Mm-hmm.
as my superpower.
Sure.
Because I can do multiple things at multiple times and jump from thing to thing.
Absolutely.
But I think that was part of, becoming self-aware. So
Yeah.
did you embrace that? Did you embrace your ADHD?
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? Like the systems that we're pushed into, like public school or whatever. And I was a public school teacher for 12 years. They're just not set up for thriving, if you have that kind of neurodivergent way of thinking. And so, as adults, we get to structure our world. And, it's really sad to me to see how many people with ADHD, or, I was dyslexic too, and, all those things that went with that like, absolutely, it's a superpower. Absolutely, it's a gift. But if they got so beat down in the structure where it didn't work well, that they lost all their confidence and didn't know how to reclaim it and create their own environment that, completely matches their way of thinking, way of doing things, their superpowers, absolutely. Like that's how I structure my life. That's how I run my business. And I also get support with the things that I know I'm not good at. Like I have somebody that helps me organizing things, and, does my newsletter for me, and I do a podcast, and they take it and break it down. And it allows me to really focus a lot more where my genius is, and not do as much of the things that, that I was always in trouble for doing wrong in school. Right?
And like one of my friends, Robert Garcia, he's a doctor, and I had him on the show a couple years ago, and he taught me that everybody has a different way of learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For me, you can show me in a book all day long how to do something, I'll never figure it out.
Right.
But if you show me physically,
yep,
do it a couple of times, I'll never forget it.
Yeah,
but
I'm very much the same way.
Yeah, and I think so many of our kids are taught, well, this is the only way to do it. And I think that's why a lot of our kids are falling through the cracks.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, I watched it as a teacher myself, how many kids just lost all their confidence, and like these brilliant kids, that have so much to offer, but they just don't fit well in the structure and the system they're forced into. And then they come up with stories about themselves and they lose their confidence and they don't pursue, all the many things that they could do. It's funny. I think of one of my friends that I remember I think we were in 7th grade and we went to the guidance counselor and we were getting ready to go. I don't know if they even have Regents still in New York, but there was like a general track or a Regents track. And if you're going to go to college, or you go Regents and you go to general studies, if you were going to go into more blue collar work or whatever. And in 7th grade, the teacher said, I don't think you have what it takes to go to college. You should go this track, and just steered him away. And, he ended up becoming a nurse and eventually and later in life, but he started down a different trajectory that wasn't his passion. It'd be one thing if it's his passion, but he was told, like, you don't have the capacity for this, and steered. I remember even in 7th grade going, they told you what? Like you're like, I saw this kid is like super smart and incredible. And, here's some adult going, yeah, we'll put you in this pile. And so there's your trajectory. I like to think that doesn't happen as much anymore, but even if it's not said that overtly, that directly to us, we're still being, basically pushed in directions by by our own ability to navigate a system that isn't set up for us at all to thrive in.
And, like when I was growing up, my 4th grade teacher, Mr. Ferreira, because I had dyslexia and ADD so bad, he said to me, you'll never amount to anything. You'll never be anything. And I'm a 9th grade dropout. Wow, because I believed I would never be everything.
Yeah.
But now, as I'm writing out and sending out my best-selling book, my two best-selling books to people, I'm like, screw you, Mr. Ferreira. I'm a two-time best-selling author in spite of you. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes, those words will play over year after year until you. Now I'm old. I'm 56. But when they say you got to take the tape out and replace the tape, sometimes you have to, So now you get into school teaching. Mm-hmm. How did you get into entrepreneurship? I got to understand this, because most people, once they're in the school system, they're there until they get their 25 and they're out.
Yeah, ADHD mind sure helps. Right? And so, I started out teaching and taught for a couple of years. I was teaching 6th grade, and my 2nd year was just a really rough class. And, parents were super challenging. And I was like, I'm making no money. I'm like working weekends, waiting tables and doing handyman work to, just pay my bills. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't fun. And so I got a job offer in sales, and I was like, I'm going to go make some money. And I did for a couple of years, made a ton of money and hated my job. But, I realized I won more in bonuses like trips and stuff than I made the previous year teaching. I was like, this is great, until I got, I'm like, I don't feel like I'm making a difference. This is just, it's work that doesn't really mean anything. And then I went back into teaching. And so, that bouncing back and forth. But at a certain point, as I started to kind of, the intuition started to jump in me, and I started to realize that I wanted to be coaching people and doing sessions for people. That's really what led into it was, how can I step outside of, this container of teaching that, gives me a paycheck every month and summers off and all that structure, into, starting something completely new. And so I started a healing center and dove into that. I'm an artist as well, so I have a side business with that. And so, my bachelor's degree was in business. I don't remember much of it because I think I got diagnosed about 3/4 of the way through the program. But I feel like when we keep asking ourselves the question of what's going to light us up, what feels exciting to us, and we don't lock in on anything, that's what led to it. Everything's just breadcrumbs of like, oh, now I'm doing this. Oh, now there's this opportunity. And I think I've always seen my life as, what exciting thing wants to happen next? What opportunity wants to show up and for it to be really fulfilling and feeling alive. I never had the capacity to kind of settle in and just stick with something. Like I've lived, in like 5 different cities and 3 different states, 4 different states throughout my life. I've always just loved the next kind of adventure, and it's a way that I stay alive and full of life, I would say.
But now in sales,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of fake
A lot.
salespeople. There's
Yeah.
a, I mean, I sold timeshares for 10 years. So there's a lot of fake people that are salespeople or the sales managers. So how did you navigate the authenticity? Because they always say, "Oh, you sit at a table, you have to mirror the other person. You have to,
Right. Right.
be." And so how did you navigate the authenticity part of the sales?
Yeah, I would say that I was like 28, 29, and I think I was enamored by the amount of money I was making. And I think it wasn't the most authentic period of my life. And at a certain point, it caught up with me. And I was just like, what happened? There was new owners to the company, and they wanted us to be super inauthentic and to push stuff and sell stuff that wasn't good for people. And so at that point, I remember just making the decision, like, I'm just not going to play along anymore. And I think I got out of there, just in time before they fired me for not playing along, because, yeah, I mean that aspect of it was just something that I couldn't reconcile. And for me now, like I'm running my own business, and we can call it sales, but when we're in the service business of truly helping people and looking at what we can do for people, it doesn't feel like sales anymore. And it's it feels like seeing people's potential, showing it to them, reflecting it back to them, and asking them if they want to join me for that ride. And when they do, I know what I can create for people and what I can open them up to, and I can see very clearly their potentials. And so to me, there's a certain predictability with it that doesn't feel like I'm selling them something. That feels like, let's go on this adventure. And that's how I've lived my whole life, is really a series of adventures. And so that's what I really do, is take people on these journeys, on these adventures, and help them explore deeper and deeper their own authenticity. And so sales, it is that, but it's not that too at the same time.
Yeah, and I believe that, we're problem solvers.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all we're doing is it's solving people's problems.
absolutely.
And if you look at it that way, it's a win-win all the time, because you're just solving people's problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's about favorite thing to do. Right.
Yeah. All right. So let's take us, because anytime I've been in recovery 36 years,
Wow.
and I can go back to the day before I got sober, the day I got sober, and the day after I got sober. So I want you to take us back to the day before you had your tarot card reading,
Yeah.
the day of, and then the day after, because in my mind, you were three different people in 3 days.
Absolutely. That's a great way of putting it, Richard. I love that. And, I was, at that point, I was a high school teacher. I was a soccer coach. I really was enjoying life. I had two, it just, I think I was a lot like what I grew up in. I was just interested in being me, expressing me, doing the things that I enjoyed. And I didn't really have a connection with a deeper meaning that much. I didn't have this feeling of like purpose. I was like, I love working with kids, and, they enjoy me. And so we're having a good time. I'm teaching them things, but it wasn't like this deep rooted life purpose feeling. Even though I was exercising that to a certain degree. And then the moment I sat down with Sandy and she read those cards, like, it just blew my mind. It was a paradigm shift. It said, this world that I've been living in, it just got a big crack in it. And the fact that there's some sort of communication, there's something that I'd already experienced a lot of. I just never valued it. I never really even named it or acknowledged it. I was just like, oh, that feels better than that. And it was intuitive guidance. But that next day when I woke up, I was getting ready to go over to my realtor's office. She'd been pulling a bunch of stuff, and I was like, we can't work with her anymore. And I contacted her about it and terminating the contract, and she'd been blowing me off for about a week. And so I decided I'm going to show up at her house, or at her office, I should say, and get it taken care of. And so I'm in the turn lane to pull into her office, and I heard this subtle voice in the back of my head that said, "Not now." I'd never experienced anything like that before, but I ignored it because I was like on a mission to take care of this. Then, "Not now," louder. And then the third time it was like, "Not now." It's like, oh shit. Just pulled it out, drove home. And an hour later, I was sitting on the couch at home, still pretty freaked out by this whole thing. And I heard, now. So I got in the car, drove back over. As I opened the front door to her realtor's office, she opened the back door. She was walking in like we had an appointment we didn't have, hands me the paperwork. I signed it and we were done. And I was like, man, this world Sandy opened up for me. Like life's going to be easy. And I had no idea, I just massive paradigm shift. And the truth is, any of you that use your intuition to really guide you know it's not easy street. It's not a way to get away with having to deal with life's challenges. We get steered into like whatever growth point we need. It almost enhances the personal growth as opposed to avoiding it, which is funny to me. That mind, the way my mind was at that point, I was like, oh, cool. Now I can avoid the hardships rather than I can find value in the hardships. I can get steered into the perfect hardships for me that are going to kick my ass in just the right way so I can grow and become who I truly am. And so it really just set me on this path of personal and spiritual development. And it was weird for my friends too, because they're like, who the hell's this guy? And it was kind of like you said, 3 different people, and it disrupted my world a lot, but in beautiful ways.
I love that, and I believe that we can have a paradigm shift in a minute. It doesn't take a lot. But I know I could go back to mine, and it was probably about maybe 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. I always loved Tony Robbins, but I decided to get the audio book of Awaken the Giant Within again.
Sure.
And I started listening to that, and then I started watching him, Tim Ferriss, Ed Milet. Mm-hmm. And then they always talked about the book, The Secret.
Oh, so,
yeah. I read the book, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Now, I am a man of God. Mm-hmm. So I read the Bible, and then I started looking at a lot of the people in the Bible. They manifested. They were manifesting.
Absolutely.
And I don't think, Moses would have walked around for 40 years if they weren't thinking, I'm going somewhere.
It wasn't just blind resilience.
So let's talk about manifestation, because a lot of people think it's woo-woo.
Yeah.
I believe, even Andrew Carnegie said 100 years ago, your obsessions become your possessions.
Yes.
So let's talk about manifestation.
Yeah. And I think that you can't talk about manifestation without talking about authenticity too, because really that is what we manifest. You want to know who you truly are and what's really going on inside you. Like, look at what you're creating. And, that is our authenticity. And so often, I think this is why people try manifestation techniques and go, oh, this shit doesn't work, is because we have to shift something inside of ourselves. We have to shift an openness. We have to shift, if we have any deservedness issues, if we have whenever we have resistance to something, we can stop it in a second. And it's really about being open. This was fascinating. I met this woman recently who had recently sold her business for $100 million. And I was like, I can't even wrap my head around that much money, right? And as I'm sitting there talking with her and being in her presence, I was getting so uncomfortable. And so, because she had complete openness to money just flowing to her, and being in her energy, being around her, instantly what was revealed to me was any resistance I have to it. Like, it was just revealed in me. And I was like, God, like, I got some real blocks to money, and I wouldn't have felt it if I wasn't around somebody that can just receive $100 million. But because hers was so extreme, it revealed where I needed to move and do my inner work so that I'd be able to manifest greater wealth and abundance in my life. And, I've seen that, like I talked about before we got on the call, Bo Eason, who's speaker trainer, absolutely amazing. And being in his energy, that he puts nothing between him and the audience. And when he does that, it's just that complete authenticity, and everybody's enlisted in him because of that. And so to me, manifestation is absolutely, it's mindset. Absolutely. It's what we're thinking, but even more importantly is what is it that we're putting between us and what we're trying to create. And if we can clean that up and clear it up, it has no choice but to come to us. And that part of it is the part that people often don't talk about when it comes to manifestation, because we can say whatever mantra we want, we can hold whatever mindset we want, but if we have some resistance between us and that idea, we need to find it, and we need to work through it and let go of it. And then, it's like the ease happens. And so when I talk about intuition driving us, like, when I set the intention for more abundance, here I am in front of this woman, with that revealed to me all my own bullshit around money, and showed me right where it was so I could start dismantling it. Yeah.
Okay, and and I was just at one of my cousin's house. He's a millionaire, and we were just hanging out, talking, and I'm still on the up and coming, and I'm grateful for what I have.
Sure.
And but when I'm there, and I'm like, man, bro, you got a beautiful house. God bless you.
Yeah.
God bless you where you are in life. And I think a lot of people, when they go, like you were sitting in front of that lady that could get $100 million, a lot of people would be like, oh, she can get $100 million. She's so gifted. She has this, she has that. Instead of just saying,
judging,
God bless you.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's God bless you that you're able to do that. And I think when you live in a world of gratitude like I do, absolutely, I think things come a lot more easier, because I believe that if my God owns everything,
yes,
and he lets me borrow this house,
yep,
he'll let me borrow the beach house.
Right.
As long as I realize that it's not mine, that it's his. So,
right.
And talk about how gratitude helps, especially when you're talking about being real. And I think people like to be around grateful people.
Absolutely. And I would say that for a lot of people, like, gratitude there's a step before the gratitude, which is stopping the judgment, stopping, really, like, beating people up inside ourselves, stopping, tearing people apart for what they have and coming up with a story about them. And so, like, once we start doing that, gratitude becomes so much easier. But if we try to get to gratitude without stopping the negative, the other side of that, where we're judging people, and one of the things that helped me a ton, and this was so fascinating. This was years ago. I'd coached the first guy I ever coached that was a trust funder. So I'd been coaching for a while, and I'd never coached somebody who whose life financially was already set up for them, before they even started living. And I admittedly used to have a lot of judgment about people that were in trust fund situations, about how easy they had it, about, how things were just set up for them. And as I coached him, I realized, God, he is absolutely gridlocked by this. He doesn't trust himself. He doesn't know where to find his power. He doesn't know how to express himself, because he never had that squeeze that we've all had of who you're going to be, how you're going to show up in the world, what's required of you. And when that pressure is taken away, like, it just creates this floundering feeling, in the sense of, and then when he was really ready to find his direction, it was so hard for him, because he just didn't know where to get the power from. I was like, holy shit, it never occurred to me what a challenge it would be to be a trust funder, like, to have that set up for you. And it was mind blowing. It really flipped my whole perspective around. Like, we all carry these massive burdens. And whether, when we think somebody that is given this gift, like, it comes with a whole other edge to it, a whole other side. Because if who we are is trying to be authentic and express ourselves in the world and make a difference, and we're given everything that we need, that idea of, where do I make a difference? How do I matter? Like, it just flatlined him. And it was really, like, it was so valuable for me to coach him and help him find his purpose and his meaningful, and where his power was going to come from, and where he was going to find that strength to hold himself together and discover who he truly was. Because it was so mind blowing. I had no idea. And that judgment, it just fell apart. And it's so easy now to take that and apply it to other people. Like, everybody has their massive struggle, no matter what gifts they're given, there's always another side to it. And so when we can just recognize, we don't even need to know their story. We know we're all going through it. Nobody here on this planet has an easy ride. We all have our own curriculum, and it may look different. But when we can be grateful for what other people are bringing and what they have, it absolutely allows it to transfer to us. And the moment we're judged, the moment we, try to go, yeah, but they got this and they got that, like, we're just disempowering ourselves and going into a vibration where nothing good happens.
And I love that. But I think, like, I was playing poker one night, with one of the largest timeshare company owner in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about. I asked him. I said, "Well, what makes you
Mm-hmm.
different than the people that are cleaning up our plates?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, I have thousands of employees
Mm-hmm.
asking me for jobs, asking me for money.
Yeah.
They never ask me how I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think in order to be successful in life, you like one of my favorite songs of all time is Tim McGraw,
Mm.
"Humble and Kind."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think sometimes you have to humble yourself and say, okay, cuz you have $1 million business,
Mm.
how did you do it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So talk about being humble and how the world will come around you, especially if you're humble and you're kind.
Yeah, and I think humble and authentic are one and the same. There's this quote. I think it's Jimmy Carter, which was he's known as a pretty humble guy. The Habitat for Humanity, all he did with that, and his was it him? I think it was. He said, a lot of people in my life have been jealous of the stations I've created in life, but nobody was jealous of what it took in me to get here. All
Yeah.
the things I had to do that. And I think that life humbles us. If we really go for something, if we set big goals, like we're going to get our asses kicked. Anytime we go, I want to do that, I want to be that, the first thing that shows up is all the stuff that's between us and that, and all we get confronted with ourselves. And when we can maintain that humbleness, the idea that, we were actually talking before we got on the call about, recognizing that we never arrive anywhere. Like I always have a coach myself, even though I'm a coach.
Yeah.
And the reason
Yeah.
I do that is because, I see us like an archaeological dig. Each time if we go down another 6 inches, we're just going to keep revealing more stuff. And, the more we push ourselves, the more that we recover, all these old things or these wounds or parts of us that we've let go of. And the fact that, like, if that doesn't keep you humble, I think the antidote for not feeling humble is push yourself, take yourself to another level, go a little bit deeper, and we get humbled instantly. And it's funny, a lot of coaches don't like to talk about that. In fact, even when I talk about it in front of some other coaches, I go, you shouldn't let your potential clients hear you talk about, how you're struggling with this or you're going through that. Like they need to know they can trust you. I'm like, well, shit. Like if they think that I've got to fear, like those aren't my clients. I want clients to know that, like, we're all going through this. There is no final answer, but we get really good and comfortable at looking at our own stuff and going, oh, this is what's on my plate today. It's not bad. It's not kicking my ass anymore, but I sure have to deal with it. It sure is going to keep me humble. And so, I think that piece of just, staying in the trenches, right? And we can lead from there. But the moment people pretend that, oh, follow me, I've got this figured out, don't follow them. First off, don't follow them for sure. But secondly, how do we stay humble? We keep growing, and we keep getting confronted with our, whatever layer of shit it is that we're working through.
And I love what you said about coaching, because I have a coach for my physical.
Mm-hmm,
I have a coach for my spiritual. I have a coach for my business.
Yes.
I have a podcast coach, which is John Lee Dumas. But I wrote down, because I'm writing stuff down. Guys like Kobe, guys like Michael Jordan, guys like TB12, Tom Brady. They love to be coached up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they would get mad if they were not being coached up.
Absolutely.
And I think that if you're going to be successful in life, you need to have a coach and you need to have a mentor. So how important are those two things in success?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny about a lot of those guys that you named, they had their coach that was like their professional coach, but then they also had coaches that they hired as their coaches. And they didn't just go, oh, you know what, I played for the Patriots, so here's my coach. They said, I'm getting the best of the best, and they surrounded themselves by a team of people that could work with whatever aspect of them needed to be developed, or bring somebody else in that could see what they needed to develop. And so that piece of really looking wherever it is that, like we don't just need to to look where we are, like, what is it that we're trying to grow and bring in, like, I love that, a team around us. And, I coach a lot of, really influential people that have these big impacts out in the world. And I think they're some of the most fun people to coach. And at first it was really bizarre to coach them. We were like, these are like people I've looked up to, these people that I see as like, these massive influencers. And then to coach them and go, I got to be bold. I got to talk to them just like I would talk to somebody that's their first day, going out and trying to make a difference in the world, because they don't, like, that's what they need. They need that clarity. They need somebody who's going to be there, and give them the truth and reflect it back to them like they would with any other client. And, I mean, as you said, you got a bunch of coaches, I'm sure, that you demand the same thing from, and they demand the same thing from you. Like, and you see the people that surround themselves by yes people, and they get capped out really quick. That there's only so far they can go, and they get discouraged really fast, and they disappear. But the people that surround themselves with people that challenge them and make them look deeper, make them grow, those are the champions.
Yeah. And, also the people that we mentioned, those guys were the first ones in the practice facility.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're the last one to go home.
Absolutely.
They didn't get mad of other people's success. Tom Brady said, I kept in my wallet everybody that got picked for me, everybody that got picked before me.
Yep.
So how important is it to have self-awareness and say, okay, I can't be mad because I'm not successful because I didn't put the work in to be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, I mean, and that's it. It's out, what Tom Brady talks about, out behaving, right? He out behaves everybody. Definitely not the most gifted athlete, but he does what needs to happen. And, that piece of, like, when we keep out behaving, when we just keep moving forward and doing the right things. And one of the theories I work a lot with is the idea of our next right action. And from this place of alignment, when we're not uncomfortable, when we're not, like, caught up in something that feels wrong, but we're in our alignment, we go, this is what needs to happen. And sometimes what needs to happen is nothing. Sometimes it's not the right time to move forward. But the moment we're out in the world and we're in all that discomfort, all of our decisions are coming from that discomfort. And it's what I call discomfort-based decision-making. And discomfort-based decision-making just creates more shit. We go, I don't like this, and so I got to change it. And I'm forgetting about what I'm here to create. I forget what I'm here to do. Now I'm caught in this little bubble of things I don't like, and I'm trying to make them different. And they're complete distractions from really what my gifts are and why I'm here. But all my energy goes into that. And most of the world operates in that way. This is uncomfortable. I'm now entangled with it. I'm struggling with it. I'm trying to make it different. And all my decisions come from that discomfort. And when we let go of it and leave it over there, go, yeah, I don't like that, but it's not that relevant to me. What's relevant to me is me and my alignment and how I want to serve. And from this place, now I have a next right action. And it seldom has to do with what I don't like and what's uncomfortable for me.
And, and I'm thinking back to when you said you heard "not now" 3 times.
Yeah.
And then you heard "now."
Yes. Yeah.
And I believe that, like, for me in my life, my priorities are God, family and friends,
beautiful,
then business.
Yep. Absolutely.
If it doesn't have to do with those 4 things, I'm probably going to say no.
Yeah,
I don't have the bandwidth for it.
Yeah,
so how important is the word go, but how important is the word no?
Yeah, I mean, and that piece, and it's kind of funny to me as you're saying, I hadn't really thought about how simple that communication was, right? It's like I finally, the divine spoke to me, and I heard not now. like the first words he said to me was no. All right, and awesome, and that piece of, it's that meddler part of us, the part of, I'm going to go in, I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to get my realtor to change this, I'm going to force it to happen, versus ease, like trusting, knowing the right timing, knowing to sit back and let things develop and not force stuff, but also not playing a game where we, become these spiritual people that don't engage in the world and don't make a difference. And so to me, like, all the work that I do is talk about it being in this cusp between, that non-ordinary reality where we're getting all that access, but also the cusp of the ordinary reality where we're in here making a difference and we're really grounded in ourselves and our body and our clarity and why we're here. and what we have to do and how we want to be of service. Because the moment we stop all that distractions and engaging with all the bullshit, which we may often feel like it's service because we're always helping people in the entanglement, and we come back here and things get quiet, now is where we really serve from. Often there, we're just getting entangled with people and making their suffering, more sustainable, versus from here, like how do I really make an impact? And when I pull all my reserves back to me and then bring that to the world, that's how I make an impact. But when I'm out in all of it, I'm just diffused. Like you said, if I'm worrying about everything that's not these things that are important to me, like I'm cooked. All my energy's gone. I don't make a difference. I just sustain the suffering.
So now this is a teaching podcast. So a lot of my audience are veterans. We joined the military at a young age.
Yeah.
We're taught who we are or we're supposed to be. We have the rank, we have the ribbons, we have the pins.
Very specific roles.
When we're no longer that, when we hang up our uniforms, like for me, I hung up my uniform Labor Day 2012, and that was the day that I attempted suicide.
Wow.
Because I didn't know who I was.
Yes.
I'm not Sergeant Kaufman anymore.
Yeah.
So now I have to figure out who I am. So what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for somebody that's either in the military or getting out of the military? How do you figure out who you really are when you've just been playing a role for the last 20, 30 years?
Yeah. This was shocking to me. I was working with a Navy Special Forces veteran. This was 12 years ago, probably. And he was, out having all these struggle with his marriage, struggle with, didn't want to be here, struggling with staying alive, struggling with all this stuff. And as we got working, it was taking a while for me to land on what is it that he's missing? What is it that's not like, the same thing, like the massive loss of identity. But really what it was that he was seeking everywhere in his life was that same level of love, that the brotherhood of being in the military and knowing somebody completely has your back and they will sacrifice their life for you. And I was like, love? Like, really? Like that channel 3, I'm like, love is what you're missing? Like, totally mind blown that love was what he was missing the most. And that full on commitment that was the only place in life where he's ever been that committed to somebody else and they've been that committed to him. And that piece of like, wow, that's a really hard thing to find in the civilian world, right? And just speaking through my experience with him and seeing that, and then what he really found was a joy inside of himself of like, it came back to service. It came back to how, as I discover who I am underneath this. And once he started to really open up to that love inside of him, like, because it was all tough, it was all like that kind of love. You don't look at it and go, oh, that's love right there. Like that's badass shit, And so to interpret what's underneath that is this, this craving for that kind of love and that kind of support. And then he started to provide that to other people in his life. And I say, when we start to provide what it is that we most want, and once he could identify what that was and start to share it and be it for others, he started to feel that come alive in his life again. And, he barely made it through that time. And, like he's a happy guy now. And that I really feel like that was the piece, was he realized, just so clearly that what he was missing was this deep commitment. I would do anything for you and you would do anything for me. And it's love. And so how do I share that in the world? And how do I engage with others from that place? And that elicits it out of them. And all of a sudden now there's deep meaning again. And, then it became reconstructing, and letting who he is emerge and find out who's underneath, all those roles and responsibilities that he had to play. But it really started out with this feeling of what is it that I really treasure that feels like it's missing in my life. And it was, very clear. And once he started offering it, that was the upward churn.
So when somebody comes to you and says, David, I need to be authentic. What are some of the things that you actually do when they're sitting in front of you for the first time?
Yeah, a lot of it is happens at an energetic level. And it may sound weird to say, But so much of our identity comes from feeling what the world wants from us. And so the aligned living system is really these simple techniques where we just push the world back and just stop asking it. And we ask it in a lot of ways, and a lot of it is energetic. And we've all felt that experience of walking into a room and just feeling the energy of the room. And if it's uplifting, we can feel that. If it's like heavy, we feel that. And so like we know that we're picking up something energetically and emotionally from that. And it's happening all the time, and quite often so subtle, but it's happening from everywhere. And when we're tapped into that, like the world just directs where we go and how we feel. And then the loop that keeps happening is heavy. It's not uplifting. It's not, unless we get really good at filtering and just picking out the parts of people in life that feel good and pretending the other doesn't, which some people get good at, but there's a level of missing authenticity. And so when we stop that and basically restructure the way that we run our energy and start with us and our connection with God and our connection with what I call sacred earth, like really grounding ourselves in here, and then bring that to the world, all of a sudden our perspective changes. And this is where we start to get what I call our emerging self. We start to go, well, if I'm not asking the world who I am, but I'm asking God in my own alignment who I am, and feeling it, being it, and then expressing it, all of a sudden now my identity starts to shift because I'm starting from what's underneath all this bullshit instead of all the bullshit coming at me. And that is the beginning of the work that we do together. I do about 10-week programs with people because it takes that long to lock in the tools. There's a bunch of tools connected with it where, we're working with really reclaiming that authenticity and all the parts we've abandoned ourselves. And this is a really fascinating part of this is the idea of our fractured self. And so, all of us have decided at some point in our lives that we'd be better off if a part of us didn't exist. Maybe it's the part where we're too sensitive. Maybe it's the part where we're too aggressive. Maybe it's the part where we're too whatever, that it got bad reviews from people around us or it got us in trouble. And so we sever it and go, you know what? I'm not that anymore. And in that short-sightedness, life becomes easier. But the truth is that now we've actually fractured our wholeness. And so now we're out in the world looking for that missing part of us. And we can't go back and get it because we've already said that that's not a good thing for us to have. That's bad. And so it's not me anymore. And so instead we create these placeholders out in the world that represent whatever that is that, we were trying to reclaim inside of ourselves. And so it's often almost always in relationships. And we find the areas where we act almost desperate and weird to keep those relationships in place the way they are. And we're willing to, because we've basically been compromised. We're willing to do whatever it takes to hold that feeling of wholeness for us. But the reason that we don't feel whole is not because of that relationship and it moving or whatever. It has to do with us having fractured off a part of ourselves. And so when we start to reclaim that part of ourselves and bring it back in, all of a sudden that desperation for having something else that represents it in place isn't there. And from that whole place, we start to show up in the world in a much more full way. And we're not compromised anymore because we're not taking something from the world that we desperately have to have and that needs us to be a certain way in order to maintain it. And so, whenever we've compromised ourselves in any area of life, we lose our authenticity. And so to take that back, it's an absolutely massive part of the work that I do with people too.
All right. So let's talk for the last couple of minutes about vibration.
Yeah.
Because, I had somebody on my show a while ago and we were talking about vibration. Mm-hmm. And she's like, some vibrations can go out to 4 miles. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, this sounds kind of woo-woo. I'm like, sure. But ever since I had that conversation, anytime I go anywhere, I believe I'm blessed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I believe that I'm pushed forward, not being, cocky or arrogant.
Yeah.
But, just saying, good things are going to happen to me. Yes. I'm going to get the best sales. Yes. I'm going to get the best parking space.
Yep.
We went on a cruise and they treated me like a king for no reason.
Yeah.
They're calling me Sir Richard for absolutely no reason.
Yes.
And then last week where I'm driving with my wife, we're going to the mall. And as soon as we get there, the first spot opens up. She goes, "It's you."
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always you that you're putting out these vibrations. Absolutely. So how important are people to talk? How can we talk about this vibration? It's a real thing, right?
It absolutely is. And it's funny when I do that, people call me King David. right? It's funny. I'm like, where did that come from? And then it happens again and again, So Sir Richard, I love it. But it is that feeling of, yeah, there's something blessed about me. The energy that we're letting off, that we're emitting feels good to people. And people are so used to that, not so much, right? Like the world, people are in struggle. And so when we're emitting a really positive vibration, it uplifts people and they like it and they want to be part of it and they want to engage. And the more aligned we are, the more they want to replicate it in their own self. It's not something they want to tuck under and borrow our power. They feel good around us and they want to replicate that same thing in their field. And it's interesting to me, like here's such a great example of this. When we walk around and if we're, very empathic and very sensitive to other people's, we get a read on people the moment we feel their energy, right? And so you look at you and get a signature of you and what you're about. You look at me, the same thing. And so that's our humanness. That's all the shit we've been through. That's all the ways we've taken God's light that runs through the top of our head and dimmed it down into our human version of our divine blueprint, which, is right there available for all of us just above our heads. And so one of the games I started playing with, instead of experiencing people as their, in their human self, and found that, what if I just focused right above their heads, right where that divine blueprint, their most aligned, greatest version of them sits. And so I just bring my awareness to that spot right above their head. And you can do this, with my head at the same time, and just get a sense of how does this person feel to me when I'm feeling them just there. And it's amazing how things just get lighter. No matter how much work we've done with ourselves, we're not our divine selves. We're human. But we have this divine blueprint that's right above our heads. And when we start to experience everybody that way, I'll do it when I'm driving down the freeway. If it starts to feel heavy or people are stuck in traffic, I'll just start to become aware of everybody right above their vehicles. And all of a sudden, there's just this uplifting, beautiful feeling because we all have this potential. And then we have the stuff that's happened to us, the stuff that happens in our lives and the stories we tell ourselves. And we, throw all that on top of us and then, radiate that out into the world. And so the more clean and clear we can have ourselves, like we can utilize that way to tap into other people, but we can also bring more and more of that of us. And, all of a sudden the parking spot opens up. All of a sudden people are, noticing us and being really kind and supportive, and opportunities land in front of us and synchronicities happen. And we just become much more in resonance and in synchronization with the way things want to flow. And when we get in struggle, same kind of thing. We get in a bad mood, all of a sudden somebody else just cut us off and took that parking spot. All of a sudden, like back when I was a teacher, I used to laugh and go, like, oh man, if I was out too late the night before, maybe I had a couple too many drinks back then, I'd come in and my class would be horrible. I'm like, why are these kids always such jerks on the days I don't feel good? They're always great on the days I feel good, but on the days I don't feel good, as if there was no correlation between where I'm coming from and the way people are responding around me. And kids are so great at reflecting that. So it was pretty funny what I didn't get back then.
So what's going on in David's world right now? I know you're traveling a lot and doing a lot of different things. And how can we become part of your ecosystem?
Yeah. So, I mean, the easiest way is to go on my website, which is davidwaldas.com, WALDAS.com. And, there I have my offerings where I offer my programs. And I'm really excited because I've been working on, I got the download for the Aligned Living System in 2016, and it's been fine tuning ever since. And I've trained a bunch of coaches, but I'm getting ready to start launching a coach training academy for it too. So training other people to do this same work. And so I offer programs myself through there that are 10 weeks for small group programs. I still work with a few one-to-one clients here and there, but then starting this coach training for other people that want to teach the same alignment system to others. And so it's really kind of an exciting time for my business because it feels like I can finally be exponential with my reach by training other people to do the same thing. And also, working with groups is always an exponential component as well. And so, it's really a super fun time in the evolution of what aligned living is. And in the last 6 months, I've gotten a whole bunch more downloads that they're all focused on feeling powerful inside our body, feeling safe inside our body, getting really clear about who we are and bringing that to the world. And that was always kind of the core of aligned living. But in the last 6 months, these new tools have just kind of, again, created an exponential effectiveness of it, which has been super fun.
David, brother, I just want to say I'm so grateful and humbled that you hung out with me today. Hopefully we can build a generational relationship from this point on.
Love it,
So
Richard.
I just want to say thank you. And guys, as you know, I end the show every week with this, that I believe that every morning we wake up, you have a choice. You could be a victim or you can be a victor. And if you listen to this show, you're no longer victims of your past. You're victors of your present and your future. So thank you guys for always showing up. And remember, guys, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Have a great week. David, my brother, this has been an honor, and I'm truly humbled and grateful. Thank you.
Likewise, Richard. I really appreciate you having me on here. It's been great visiting with you and connecting. Hope your audience really enjoys what we had to say. So
have an awesome week.
You too, sir. Thanks, everyone.